It's Clark and Perry on the case. Clark and Perry.
Do what it takes.
Clark and Perry. Investigate.
The activities and interests of local artists in the Windy City's finest throughout both Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, Alberta. Available on TELUS Optic TV on demand, VidFlex, YouTube, and more for limited time only. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, welcome to the Windy City's finest. I'm joined again once more by Melissa Fry, also known as Art by Melissa Fry on Instagram as well too. Now, this was something that we kind of introduced into the interrogation, but you're actually a big gardener.
Yes, I am. I really love gardening, and actually my garden is a little too big for me to manage, but that's okay.
That's awesome, because it sounds like as well too that you have like a unique way of finding things to eat and drink.
Yeah.
Not typically known to most people.
Yeah, so I have a degree in environmental science, and I did applied agricultural research for a few years, and so part of my job was actually being a weed expert, like identification and,
In like fields or in other gardens and all that stuff? In crops
as
well too.
So because I worked in efficacy, so does this chemical work? Does it control these weeds?
Right.
So I'd have to know the weeds from like, look at the seeds and be like, oh, this is this or this is that. And then through a coworker at that job, I actually found out that, some of these are edible. Like, oh. And so I did some more research in that on my own time. And yeah, so I basically don't buy, spinach in the summer anymore. Actually, or in the winter, because what I'll do is I will go out and, when I'm walking my dog or anything like that, I'll actually collect weeds. Sometimes I'll bring a little baggie with me.
That's...
and, and there's certain things to watch out for. Like, first of all, you have to know exactly what it is that you're collecting.
Right.
There's the golden rule of foraging, which is don't munch on a hunch.
Right.
I'm not sure who came up with that, but you need to be absolutely confident in what you are grabbing and collecting before you consume it.
Well, an innocent look at that is, you don't want to go and all of a sudden munch on poison ivy, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to be sure and absolutely sure that you're eating something that you're
fine.
allowed to eat.
So, for example, an invasive weed in here, like it's actually noxious. It's very, very bad. It's a very beguiling plant. It's called creeping bellflower or Campanula something or whatever. I can't remember the entire species name. But so it can have leaf shape like this. I just pulled this from the alley by my house.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a leaf shape kind of like this. But sometimes it can be like, I think this is going to turn into a flower stalk later maybe.
Okay.
But it can also have slightly different kind of shaped leaves, like less pointy. Like, so this is the same plant, even though they look maybe a little bit different. Right?
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the same plant. And so probably the safest place to get weeds like this is from your own garden, because you know if they've been sprayed, you know if dogs have done their business on them, or if bird droppings or anything like that are on them. Those
you can tell with the damage of the like evidence of the plant as well too.
Sometimes.
Okay.
But this one, if it's in your own garden, there's one lookalike, just one that I've encountered, and that's digitalis or foxglove. And that one, when it's very early in the spring and just emerging, it looks pretty similar, except digitalis has more rounded leaves.
Interesting.
And digitalis is used to make like blood thinner. It'll thin your blood.
Oh, okay.
So don't eat those. So never munch on a hunch.
No, never munch on a hunch. Okay.
Never munch on a hunch.
That makes a lot of sense for sure. But you were able to basically like stop buying spinach and grow it theoretically yourself in a weed form.
You don't even have to grow it yourself. You can just go look for it.
Really?
Yeah. You just go look for it. Or if it does show up in your garden and you're like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, I have so much of this in my yard. It's such a problem. It's so invasive and so aggressive.
Yeah.
But when it gets big like this, it's kind of like too tough to eat fresh. So what I do is I'll pluck leaves and I wash them really good. I spin them in my salad spinner, and then I just put them in a labeled Ziploc bag. I put the species and the year, and I just put it in the freezer, and I just keep adding to the same bag. and then eventually I'll end up with like a block of frozen leaves, just like spinach.
Huh.
And there's nothing like, particularly wonderful about this. It just tastes like a green leaf. It's an inoffensive green leaf. It's just when it's big, it's a bit tough.
Yeah.
So it's fine. It's free. And also a lot of modern kind of foods that you buy in the supermarket, they're bred for appearance and shippability.
Right.
So it's like if you have a homegrown heirloom variety of tomato.
Or butterleaf lettuce, for example,
or anything
right?
like that.
Yeah.
Or like a carrot. The ones at the supermarket tend to be like, they'll be huge and they'll look nice, but they'll be like hard. Like the tomato flesh will be like firm.
Yeah.
And so the same with a lot of, wild leaves. Like they don't, like I literally pluck this within a half an hour and it's kind of wilting. But they can have, higher concentrations of vitamins and minerals than domesticated foods.
So this kind of touches a little bit, and like this was a definition that you had given me some time ago as well too, but guerrilla gardening.
Yeah.
What's guerrilla gardening?
Guerrilla gardening is just doing what you want. You're like, it's free real estate. And then sprinkling some seeds there. So I have, for example, ethically collected, wild mint, right? So I only take 5% of what's there. I always leave way more than I take. And I collect those seeds. I'll keep them, at ambient outside temperature over the winter. And then next year I'll like, Nick Sharon in this kind of soggy spot, this could use some wild mint.
Yeah.
And I'll just do that. I'll just sprinkle the seeds.
And then expect to see it the next year or later that same year as well too?
Yeah,
and
probably
just
next
pick it
year,
up?
or even a couple of years. You can do that with, especially if it's a garden box that's planted, if it's just like out in some urban area or outside of a business and it's just planted with a bunch of, petunias or something, which pollinators don't really enjoy.
Yeah, no.
If you've got some seeds in your purse, you can just put some other stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Who's
so much
gonna
space.
stop you?
There's free real estate.
Yeah, especially if there's like a neglected garden bed in, Galt Gardens or something, and there is, and it's full of weeds. So just put some other stuff in there.
Why not? Who's going to tell the difference, right?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's kind of interesting too, because like there's going to be a variety of different weeds that you're able to kind of grow and cultivate and all that stuff too, even if you do use it in your own garden as well too.
Yeah, right? And I just, it's like when I'm weeding my own garden, like if they're nice and look good and look like kind of tender, then they go in a bowl.
Yeah.
And the ones that are kind of wrecked or like sunburnt or whatever, then they just go in the yard waste bag.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So what else do you have kind of here displayed in front too?
Yeah, sure. So this here is like a coffee substitute I've made out of, this is dandelion roots. So when you get those really huge dandelions.
Huge tap roots.
And so I just wash them really good, take the little rootlets off, and I scrub them until I think they're good, and then I scrub them a little more. And then I roast them until they're like really kind of almost not caramelized, but like really, really roasted.
Right.
Like very seriously roasted, where they'll actually snap.
Okay.
They want them to be totally dry, and then I just grind it up. And you can use that kind of like almost like a tea. It's kind of like a coffee substitute. Like you're definitely not drinking coffee. It's very obvious, but it's
But okay, so like you're obviously not drinking coffee. That means like I'm not assuming that dandelions secretly have caffeine in them. No, they don't. But it tastes similar to coffee as well, right?
Like you still, like if you kind of doctor it a little bit, maybe if you put some milk and sugar in there, it's like a warm kind of.
It's a beverage.
Drink. It's
a
warm
hot beverage.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've made some as well too to sample. I've had the chance to kind of drink this before, but this is kind of like what it still looks like coffee. So mind you that this water is currently hot but not filtered. So we still have, like, you can kind of see the roots as well too.
Yeah.
But it has basically in the past, like just 5 minutes that we've been talking, it has colored it to basically look like coffee as well too.
Pretty much.
And I'm going to take a drink and just
Okay.
remind myself of what this tastes like as well too.
Yeah. I should have brought like a filter, like you could put it in a tea bag or something.
Yeah.
but
Well,
I
and
just- I
honestly,
forgot.
it reminds me more of tea
Yeah.
as well too. It's a very earthy tea.
Mhm.
And it's still good. Like, I would definitely still drink this.
Mhm.
I, in fact, would argue that I have drank this at a few other stores and places that
Yeah.
I won't list. But yeah, that's actually a very easy and
Mhm.
way to still use the yard waste as well too. But
Yeah, for sure. And it's like dandelion tea is available to purchase, and this is what it is. If you have the time and the inclination, you can do it for free,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or people can. Another thing that I have here is this is pickled spruce tips. So I think this is more of a common thing in like a Northern European kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So I pickled these spruce tips. And right about now, actually, now depending on the tree and where it is, it might be a little too late. But when the spruce tips just emerge and they have that little papery kind of covering on them, you take that papery covering off and then you take the spruce tip.
Okay.
And yeah, you pickle them and they're kind of almost citrusy. They're very soft and chewable. So what I've done with these is I just strain them and maybe chop them up, and I've kind of blended them with cream cheese. And it's really good for like, a seasonal sort of like winter charcuterie kind of thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And, have it maybe if you have any like venison sausage or something like that, it's really good with that. Or even just, like, I've chopped them, blended them with cream cheese, add a little salt and pepper, put it on crackers and put like, salami and that sort of thing on it. And yeah, I have a spruce tree in my yard, so one of the branches is low enough for me to easily reach.
Yeah.
So I just, collect as much as I want to pickle.
Exactly.
This here, well, it's supposed to be lilac jelly, but you can tell it's syrup. That's the thing with wild foods sometimes is the pectin levels. And actually, like, lilacs don't have any pectin in them. I had to add it, and I didn't add enough pectin. And there's floaty bits in here, and that was because of the time of year I collected the lilacs. I collected them when they were very close to being finished flowering.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually the little stamens and like some pollen that has broken off, and that made it through the strainer that I used, which is pretty neat.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it just tastes like lilacs. You can also make lilac flowers into lilac lemonade.
Mm-hmm.
You can just make some lemonade and just put the lilac blossom in there, like the whole thing, and then let it infuse and take it out later.
And then finally you have this.
Yeah,
I don't know what this is.
These are pickled seckle pears. So seckle pears, like on this side here, that's like the whole half a pear.
Mm-hmm.
And that little bit in the middle is where the seeds were. So I think I used it like a tiny melon baller to like get those out.
Yeah.
To get the seeds and the woody core out.
Now, I clearly don't know which plants are kind of which, and I assume at one point that you didn't know either. But
yeah.
So what really kind of led you down this path?
I would say, it was, my former job, where it was literally my job to be a weed identification expert.
Right.
To know and identify the effects of different herbicides on these weeds, and to be able to rate the control. So, but you don't have to know all of the weeds. You can kind of pick one that's easy. Like this one here is lamb's quarters, or Chenopodium species, which means like goose foot. So you can see the broad shape of the foot, like
yeah.
It kind of looks like a goose foot. So this one here is starting to bud. So this is getting a little bit big for eating, but I would maybe take some of these leaves and clip them off of these stems and, freeze them, because that'll bust up some of the cellular membranes and make it like more tender. But yeah, you can just learn like one of them and just pick that. You can be super confident. Like you don't have to know all of them.
You just need to know a couple. Right.
Or even just one, like if you like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that's very interesting. And something that I, well, honestly, personally, haven't ever thought about in a long time, because you're the first person that we've met that's been an actual forager, especially when it comes to
yeah,
weeds, like edible weeds. Never would
yeah,
have thought about
and
that as well too. Especially with how
um,
tasty and how reasonably they actually eat, like, or
yeah.
consumed and taste and everything. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, like I'm actually going to be making for supper and that for my household. I have a couple of bags of these. One bag I collected from this spring, and another bag that I collected from last year. I'm going to be making like Greek spinach pie, but instead of spinach, I'll be using the lamb's quarters and bellflower leaves.
Yeah. So, like, you also were mentioned to by a friend. It was that some of these weeds might actually be edible. So, was there
Mm.
like a specific line of research that you had to go into?
I basically, I'm not sure where that former coworker actually discovered that, but he mentioned it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been eating amaranth all
Mhm.
summer," you know.
But you just went into Google searches.
Yeah,
and,
pretty
and-
much, and you just use the, is this credible? Is this a credible source?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Doing your own research, all that
Yeah,
stuff too.
so doing your own research, but I think was it the CRAP that they teach you, like when you're
Mhm.
when you take that little course on how to do research in the library, like
Yeah.
in middle school.
Yeah.
Is it like credible? Is it repeatable or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one resource that I actually like is I have books from Lone Pine Publishing,
Okay.
which is very common in the environmental science crowd. Some of those
Mhm.
books are actually required to be purchased for certain courses.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so and Lone Pine Publishing has plant identification guides, and some of them, depending on the authors, also have additional like anthropogenic notes.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but a lot of these, or some of these, I have a lot of creeping bellflower, so I would look up, like in my garden, it is a huge problem. So I just looked up, is it edible? Is it toxic?
Yeah.
Because that's another thing too, is sometimes edible. If that's all it says about it, that just means non-poisonous. It doesn't mean it's tasty.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And a lot of
Yeah.
people kind of, I guess, if they see them as a weed, they just give them that stigma where it's like, oh, well, just need to get rid of it type thing.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't taste good. It doesn't look good. I just need to get rid of it type thing. But in contrast, we can
absolutely. It's kind of metal too, because I have a huge problem with this plant. It'll choke everything out.
Yeah.
And it's a noxious weed. It's one of those things where if it gets bad enough in your yard, your neighbors can report you, and then the city will say, you have to control this or we'll do it for you and send you the bill.
Oof.
Like, it's a noxious weed, which is the worst weed there is in Alberta.
Well, and then there's something to be said too, that you've given me such a problem. Now I'm just going to eat you. Like...
Yeah, I'm gonna devour the flesh of my enemies.
Yes.
It's very metal.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that has got so much like in it, and so much probably to like get learning into. And I didn't even think about potentially just doing one. You don't have to get into them all.
Yeah,
you just need to get
it
into
doesn't
one.
have to be a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like you can just you can really confidently identify if you have a particular problem weed that shows up in your yard or in the neighbor's yard or wherever. Just look, is this edible? And there's all sorts of resources, online, and there's different social media accounts of people who've even written cookbooks about foraging for weeds.
Wow.
There's even online classes about foraging for weeds.
Yeah.
So it's just finding one, or that's maybe particular to your area. And there's also, even if you don't want to particularly eat these green leafies, my roommate Devin actually is also like a huge forager, and so the things like this, like the pears and the lilacs and things like that, those are very much adjacent to it's just one little step more to eat like weeds. So he does foraging for like there's Saskatoon bushes, there's gooseberries, Lethbridge. There's also like cherry trees, Evans cherries. everywhere in Lethbridge. And Lethbridge also has this food forest, excuse me, program. So in places like Nicholas Sharon Park in Lethbridge, there's a bunch of pear trees.
Oh.
And you can just go and like pick those. They're for everyone.
And just come over with a bag and just grab as much as you can?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Like there's tons of crabapple trees on the University of Lethbridge grounds. And you just go pick those.
Wow.
Yeah. There's
the more you know, really. Like
also, so it doesn't even, if, you know, like I'm not a super, super huge fan of leafy greens. Like I'm not one to just sit and eat a bowl of greens, even if there's delicious dressing. It's not really my jam.
I don't think a lot of people are.
Yeah, but I do use it for, you know, for pasta salad and stuff like that. And yeah, like spanakopita, the Greek spinach pie. So, but yeah, there's plenty of like wild edibles. Like even there's a fast food place that has gooseberries growing by the drive-through.
On your way by, you just pick up whatever you ordered, and then just on your way by, just grab the big claw. Just collect everything.
My boyfriend and I, we went out one evening and we were picking the gooseberries, and then people are going through the drive-through and like, what are you two doing? Like, oh, these are gooseberry bushes.
Yeah.
We're picking these gooseberries. I'm like, oh, what are they like? So I just impulsively, I was just,
here you go, catch.
Threw one in his truck, and he got it. And he's like, oh yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's all sorts of things like that. There's also a fruit rescue. I can't 100% remember the name of the organization that puts it on, but every fall, if you look up on maybe like Facebook or Google or something, like Lethbridge Fruit Rescue, people who have fruit trees in their yards will say, here, I have an apple tree, or here, I have a cherry tree. This is my address. Like, I'll come get them.
Yeah.
And you can go get them.
Because I'm not going to eat them, and it would just be wasting them and all that stuff too. Well, with so much information that's out there right now, what would you say is your primary resource that you used?
My primary resource for identifying them was my job, but literally just Google. There's a lot of good information there. If you know, like if you kind of just look up like edible weeds, you're just going to get a whole bunch of stuff that may or may not be relevant.
Yeah.
But if you can use, there's a lot of apps where you can take a picture of a plant and then it'll, it also has like location information. It'll be like, oh, this was seen nearby, it's this. And then you can go to Google or some other search engine and say, is this specific species edible? And that will clear out a lot of the noise.
And just really give you a chance to kind of hone in to everything as well too. Wow. Well, that's fantastic. There's so much information and so much possibility that we have with here. I know I personally am very tired of the grocery prices going up. So I think this is going to be something that anybody could actually get into, especially if you got dandelions literally growing in your backyard and front yard. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
So that's really excellent. Any closing thoughts that you have kind of on this, or any tips or tricks into getting into this?
Well, I was actually like, for the initial part, the tips and tricks and getting into it, a project that I'm going to be working on this summer is, as soon as I find the time, alluding to my is I want to make a little pocket guide of, you know, what these plants look like, some of their common morphologies, and also just general foraging safety. Like, you know, using all your senses, using your nose. Like, does this smell kind of like soapy or chemically? Well, then it might have been sprayed. Even if it is dry,
it still will have that residual stuff
it
right there.
may have just been sprayed and might not, because it takes a while for it to actually affect the weeds.
Right.
And, you know, what's a good time to, like, at what developmental stage, for example, to pick them, and some common identifying characteristics. And if there are any dangerous lookalikes, be like, okay, well, make sure you're not eating this, right? So yeah, I just want to make a little pocket guide like that with some illustrations and some photographs and some tips and tricks and some recipes actually. So
Excellent.
yeah, so that's hopefully by this fall, that's something that will be done.
Yeah.
I'm also going to be, I'm not sure how to put myself out there for this, but I'm also willing to just, if someone wants me to come over to their house or go for a walk in their neighborhood, I could be like, you can eat this, you can eat this, you can eat that, don't eat that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, geez, that's a plethora of information as well too. So ways to reach you through your Instagram, I'm assuming as well
Yeah,
too.
through Instagram. I reached out to a couple of different organizations and said, here, this is what I want to do, but I'm not entirely sure how to put myself out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so far I haven't really heard anything back, but yeah, we'll see.
Art at Melissa Fry, because I wanna learn more about this stuff. I want to learn more about this as well too. So I think that's a perfect way to get to know you. And hopefully our fellow investigators have enjoyed getting to know you. You are a multidisciplinary person right now. Like you got a huge amount of foraging experience and painting as well too. So are we. Yeah. But and it sounds like, and to be clear, your next work is going to be at CASA when it comes to the acrylic painting. And you're still looking to develop up some new community members as well too when it comes to foraging. So
yeah, so just some weed walks.
Some weed walks. I like it.
Yeah, like, all this stuff in your garden, you haven't sprayed it, you can eat all of it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to kind of delve a little bit more into that, hopefully in the near future as well too. But unfortunately, that's all the time that we have on. So thank you again, our investigators, for tuning in with us. This has been the Windy City's Finest. I'm Clark. He's Perry. We have Melissa Fry here as well too. So thank you again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
It's Clark and Perry on the case. Clark and Perry do what it takes. Clark and Perry investigate.
The activities and interests of local artists in the Windy City's Finest throughout both Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, Alberta. Available on TELUS Optic TV on demand, VidFlex, YouTube, and more for limited time only. Terms and conditions apply.